Are you ready for you shitty gal?
The Schein on Podcast.
The Schein on Podcast.
The Schein on Podcast, Season 5.
We're going to pull back the curtain on the divorce process. It's fun, insightful, tremendous guests. They're topics that far too often many people shy away from. But not here on the Schein on Podcast.
It's episode 91 of the Schein on Podcast. I'm Evan Schein. We have an absolutely incredible episode today. The last podcast of the summer, and wow, did that go fast. We end the summer with a phenomenal guest and a great featured guest spot on the podcast. Dave, do you believe it's the end of summer?
They always go too quickly, let's face it. And it's always a little bit depressing because up here where we are in the Northeast, summer's pretty short.
It is short. And it started like 2 weeks ago. I started getting a little depressed when the conversation goes from how is your summer to how was your summer?
Yeah. All of a sudden people are going, I hope you had a great summer. And, as we record this, we're still in August, so we're still clinging to it. We're still, actually it's posting on in August as well. So yeah, I don't want it to end until it absolutely has to, but it's getting slightly colder outside. You can feel it.
You can feel it. In many ways, love is like summer. You just want to hold on to it. You don't want it to end. And Dave, look, when it comes to love, dating, and decoding modern romance, there's experts. And then there's Bela Gandhi. She's not just a dating coach. She's a modern day Cupid and the brilliant mind behind the Smart Dating Academy, where she's helped thousands of people find real, lasting love without the games. In today's episode, we dive into Bela's journey on how she went from a successful career to building one of the most trusted names in dating coaching. We'll explore the lessons she learned along the way, the biggest mistakes people make when they're looking for love, and how to date smarter in a world that often feels like anything but. So buckle up and get ready for a great ride on this week's podcast. But first, let's fire up the docket.
Let's do it.
And now, let's see what's on the docket.
Couple of very interesting items on the docket this week, Evan. We start with a nice piece, an interesting piece, from the Institute of Family Studies.
Item 1.
The headline of this reads, Why the Divorce Decline Might Be Bad News. Now, a couple entering their first marriage, according to the report, in the 1990s, had about a 47% chance of splitting up. That number has now gone down to only 40%. But as this article says, there's still a lot of work to be done. Your thoughts, Evan?
Dave, I thought it was a really interesting article. And look, we've talked about this before. I feel like it's getting a lot of traction in the news lately. Divorce rates slightly declining, still high. But do we celebrate it? Or do we look to the fact that people are not getting married at the frequency that people were getting married before and from many, many years ago? Look, people are living together. People are entering all sorts of, relationships and relationship agreements and relationship arrangements. And look, people are often giving up, I find, on this idea until death do us part, and that marriage is necessary for an identity, right? So do we celebrate it? Do we look on the front end that people maybe are not as optimistic, not as hopeful about marriage and relationships as they used to be? What's your take?
Yeah, I'm not sure. We've talked many times on the pod about how divorce, once the stigma was off divorce, it's kind of good news, bad news. If there's less stigma about getting divorced, it makes it easier for people who are in bad marriages to say, oh, well, Sandy and Stan down the way there, they just got divorced. I never thought they would, so maybe it's okay for me to get divorced. On the other hand, divorces are all sad. And so I think we still need another decade or so for this to sort out, because I feel like the youngest generation has a different definition of divorce, a different conception of divorce. And let's face it, legally, the definition of divorce has changed over the last 15 years or so. So that was a big non-answer, Evan. I'm not sure, but it's all interesting stuff.
Yeah, and let's just digest this nugget for a second. The institution of marriage. What are your thoughts on it? right? If you look at it, you have a divorce rate, let's call it around 50%, right? Across the board, nationwide. You have a divorce rate that hovers 50%. Then you have the people who stay together and stay married who are not happy. What percentage you want to put on that? 10%, 25%? I don't know.
At least
And then the
25%,
question,
I think. Yeah.
25%. So all of a sudden you're up to 75%.
Yep.
So then there's the 25% of people who stay together that are married. And I guess as you think about all the bets that you can possibly make in life, right? If somebody would tell you that you should bet a lot of money on a bet that is going to, on a conservative level, fail 50% of the time, in what other area would you ever take that gamble? Would you ever take that risk? And yet, time and time again, over the years and historically, people get married because there's, as we just mentioned in the opening, there's people cling to love until death do us part. So maybe we are finally seeing as a society that shift where people just are not getting married as often and they're not rolling the dice and taking that gamble like we just talked about.
And there's some logic to that. The construct of marriage came about at a time when the death expectancy age was a lot younger than it is now. So I'm not quoting chapter and verse. I don't have the science in front of me, but way back when, people lived into their 40s and then they died. So, it would make sense to marry at a young age, have kids, raise them until they get to be of an age when they can take care of themselves, and then you die. So, the divorce rate was a lot lower back then for that simple reason. I don't know if the trend is the quote unquote right one, but there's absolutely logic to it. To wait until you're in your 30s rather than in your 20s, because that way, and it all makes sense. You're a more mature person. You've had a couple struggles in your life maybe, and now you're ready to make a more informed decision than you were when you were 22, when you're still kind of just a baby in the grand scheme of things. But it doesn't. Nothing is perfect, right? Because if you're in love with someone in your 20s, you want to spend the rest of your life with them. That's what you think at that point. Who are we to say, no, wait 10 years?
Yeah, no, look, it's an interesting conversation. I know we get more into this, with Bella, coming up, but it's interesting. And I think you're right. I think the conversation that we're having now and then 10 years from now, I think is going to shed a lot of light on if we see certain percentages and statistics and really the relationship between right now and 2025 and what things look like 10 years down the road.
Let's move on to item number 2.
Item 2.
So this item goes up to big, dumb men everywhere because that's what the story is about. It comes from businessinsider.com. The headline is Weaponized Incompetence is back, and it's driving modern women out of their marriages. It tells the story of a woman named Mila who dating her boyfriend, and the big problem she had in the relationship was he would constantly dodge basic tasks like grocery shopping, telling her he didn't know how to do it. And there is where you get this so-called weaponized incompetence. Now, sometimes I was married for 23 years, and I'm sure I was feigning incompetence here and there, or genuinely incompetent. But but we know what this phenomenon is. The question is it really a real thing worth discovering under the umbrella of divorce? What do you think, Evan?
Well, first I want to say I love grocery shopping. In part, I like going up and down the aisles, and it also gets me out of my house, right?
Yeah.
But here's what I would say. I think it was interesting, and there was some levity to this, but there's also some reality to this, and there's a seriousness that underpins this article, because I do see this, especially 5 years removed from COVID, where both people in a marriage were home much more, and there was a push right towards both people contributing in the home, out of the home, and both people's personal lives, professional lives were taking place inside the home. I do see this as something that has gained incredible traction in marriages, part of discussions. I do see this, and the article quotes different therapists and couples counselors. I really do see this as something that often will come up in therapy sessions, right? So whether someone's faking the inability to do something or whether it's real, I don't know. I almost don't even care because the bottom line is I do see this playing an impact and a real one on affecting people's marriages and relationships. I do see this as something that fosters resentment, animosity, and unless addressed with a therapist, a counselor, or tackled between the couple, I think it could potentially boil over because I think it's real.
Yeah, I think it's real as well, and it probably is a symptom of something else wrong in the relationship. If you're dedicated to the relationship, you're in a loving relationship, you're going to want to be good at grocery shopping, like you, Evan. You're going to be like, sure, honey, we'll take care of that. So I think it's a symptom, and I do think it's real. So.
And Dave, no matter what your ex might say about you, you know what? I can't really see you, folding a shirt, folding a bit, I mean, I can see you doing a lot of things, right? Like you are someone who, look, excels in almost every single area I can possibly think of. Good looking, successful, right?
What?
Minus your
Go
Red
on.
Sox affiliation,
Ooh,
right?
yeah.
And the fact I can't see you folding a shirt.
I'm a terrible folder. There.
Terrible.
I said it.
But you're honest about it, and you get points for being honest about it.
I hope so. And wrinkled shirts. All right, we move on to the segment that we always say for last because it's the best. Overrated or underrated?
Overrated.
Or underrated.
Well, we've got a couple of items from the world of divorce law and then one cool item from outside the world of divorce law. First one, hidden divorce costs. Is that an issue, Evan?
Of course it's an issue.
It's an
And Dave,
issue.
it's underrated. It is an issue. Look, budgeting and preparing for the financial implications of divorce, it's absolutely crucial. And look, the reality is anyone who can tell you at the beginning of a case that your divorce is going to cost exactly this is simply not being fully candid. Things are going to come up that are going to cause legal fees to skyrocket. Unrealistic expectations, mismanaged sense of what the divorce process looks like. Is your case not in court, but then it goes to court? Are there court rulings or issues that come up related to the kids? Or maybe if everyone focuses on what matters most and everybody's amicable and plays nice in the sandbox, guess what? Your divorce may not be all that expensive. But there's going to be costs that come up based on your goals. If you want the house, there's a refinance cost. Furniture. Are you buying something new? Are you selling the house? Does it need to be fixed up or staged? Guess what? You can't communicate with your ex like so many people out there. Maybe you need a parenting app. And guess what? That parenting app will also cost a few bucks every month. The transition's tough on kids. Therapy for them. Therapy for you as the parent. The list goes on and on and on. And Dave, things come up. I tell people you can plan, but give yourself that extra financial cushion that if you don't have to spend on things related to the divorce, great. You spend it on something else, but you should know going into it, divorce and things that come up and those quote unquote hidden costs, they're real.
And therefore, they're underrated.
Underrated.
Next topic, the mental health toll that divorce takes. I'm going to tell you that I'm guessing I know which way this one is going to go because it's an important issue. But mental health toll on divorce, your thoughts? Or sorry, the mental health. You got it. Go ahead.
You're spot on. Look, it's underrated. And I often say this, going through divorce may often be the biggest life transition you may ever go through, right? No one gets married wanting to or thinking that they're going to get divorced. It's a shock to the system. It's a shock to you. It's a shock to your kids. And usually, but not always, something happens that will also shock you, whether it's an affair, something's going to upend your life and cause the world to shatter, and your belief in love and people is going to be turned upside down. And on top of all of that, on top of the emotions, divorce takes time, right? It takes time. It's a process. It's a journey. You're rebuilding your life. You're building a new life, a different life. And this all happens following the demise and the end of something that you thought you were never going to have to say goodbye to. So there are so many emotions. And then there's the divorce process, and it's a full-time job. The paperwork, questions from your attorney, financial documents, getting your attorney information that they need. So all of this, and if you think about it, and there's going to be things that come up that you can't even plan for. Working with a therapist, working with someone during a time of transition, I can't stress enough, and everyone who's listened to the podcast knows I'm a huge believer in therapy and working with a professional. I can't stress enough how important it is during a process like divorce. And for those reasons, it's underrated.
Underrated.
Final item for overrated, underrated will be a fun one. Pretty simple. Stand-up comedy. The world wants to know whether you're a fan. Evan, I know you're a fan of comedy, generally speaking, but stand-up comedy had its boom years ago, still continues to be a thing. A lot of specials on streaming services. Your thoughts?
Dave, I got to tell you, today is the theme of underrated. Look,
Wow.
comedy stand-up specials, underrated. I love it, right? Chris Rock, one of my absolute favorites. What I love about Chris Rock or stand-up in general, I love the writing behind it. I love the delivery, the timing, the cadence. I could appreciate the preparation that goes into perfecting one's craft. Chris Rock, I have vivid memories of watching, over the years with my father, the Chris Rock, specials and Kevin Hart, Nikki Glazer. Let's talk for a moment about the Tom Brady roast and how phenomenal
Oh,
she was. I mean, how do you
yes.
not watch that and absolutely love it? And she's got her tour out, which I think is, brilliant, following the Tom Brady roast. I love everything that goes into the preparation. I love the mental side of it, and I can appreciate when something lands and you see that. And in many ways, I was thinking about it. Maybe it's because I do trial work, right? And I run a firm's litigation practice, and maybe there's a relatability to being in a courtroom and the drama and the cadence and the timing and delivery and an opening statement. So maybe I see a little bit of myself, as I watch these specials. But I got to tell you, I love them.
Yeah, I love them as well. There is certainly a science to it, and Jerry Seinfeld did a documentary movie called Comedian years ago. He did it right after the sitcom wrapped up, and it featured some up-and-coming comics, including a young kid named Orny Adams, who went to summer camp with me, was a real pain in the ass, and Colin Quinn and some others. But it talked about that process of, like, you saw Jerry trying to work some new material out, and even he was struggling at times. What looks effortless on stage is the product of them studying and reworking that set for sometimes years. So I do have one question for you. I'm looking at Rolling Stone's list of I don't know when they came out with this, but the top stand-up comics of all time. And
who's number one?
Number one. Number one.
I can't see you folding a shirt, but I can see you doing stand-up.
I've tried it before. It's not easy, I'll tell you that.
What was the hardest part?
The hardest part is the rebound, so-called rebound after your joke fails, because inevitably your joke will fail. And someone who I for a short while, a friend of mine who was a lawyer who also did some stand-up comedy, she coached me up, and she said, it's set up, punchline, set up, punchline. And when it works, it's like you're developing a rhythm with the audience. They're laughing, and they kind of know when to laugh. The problem is when you go set up, punchline, and then crickets, what do you do next? You got to be ready to launch into that next joke. And if you launch into it with some trepidation, that one's going to fail too. So there you go. But number one, Rolling Stone, they had Richard Pryor. Number two, George Carlin. Number three, Lenny Bruce. Number four, Louis C.K. Strange choice there. I imagine this came out before his unpleasantries. And number five, your boy Chris Rock. Would you pick among that group, or would you say someone else is the best ever?
Great question. So
Yep.
Chris Rock, he's my number one.
Okay.
I just absolutely love his specials, love his comedy, love the writing. Yeah, I mean, I've read articles about him. It was a great article in Esquire, a few months ago. Just absolutely brilliant stuff. And I love it. And also, you know what I love about it too? It's a great escape from what we do. It's an escape from reality, right? It is just, it takes you to a place that your phone's down, you're focusing on something else. It's just for however long it is. And that's how I felt about Nikki Glazer, and the Tom Brady roast. Like, it's an escape from reality, right? for that hour.
It's also one of the purest forms of entertainment that, by and large, hasn't changed fundamentally since its inception. In other words, and I'll mention that documentary again. Again, it was called Comedian with Jerry Seinfeld. But Colin Quinn says when he goes when he goes quote unquote into the ring, he wants to quote unquote be like Tyson. Like Mike Tyson famously wouldn't even wear socks. You know, it's just he probably wouldn't have worn shoes unless he was required to. And so Colin Quinn is like, that's it. It's you and a microphone. And you keep working at that until you get the act right. So I agree, Evan. Underrated.
Underrated.
Are you navigating the challenges of divorce and feeling overwhelmed? You're not alone. And you don't have to go through it alone. You should get in touch with Rhonda Nordyke, financial divorce advocate, where it's all about you. Rhonda helps women transform what can feel like the most difficult time into a journey of empowerment. As a certified financial analyst, Rhonda is committed to guiding women to make confident financial decisions, negotiate effectively, and be positioned to leave a legacy well beyond the divorce process. She has not only helped over 1,000 women that trusted her, but also helped move $25 million into the hands of women that otherwise would have been left on the table. She'll even help you find the right attorney, support you in managing conflict productively, and give you the tools to advocate for yourself. Connect with her today at womensfinancialwellnesscenter.com, because your divorce experience should lead to a stronger, happier you.
Have you ever had a baking oops turn into something delicious? Well, that's exactly what happened with Muffin Crumbles, the dessert that's part muffin, part magic, and all mouth-watering fun. The amazing bakers at Muffin Crumbles take perfectly crumbled muffins, yes, crumbled on purpose, add fluffy homemade whipped cream, and top it all off with delicious extras. It's like a dessert party in a box. And the best part, no rules. Just pure dessert freedom. Spoon it, fork it, or mix it all up. You do you. Perfect for treating yourself, gifting a friend, or just making snack time way more fun. So grab your spork and order your Muffin Crumbles kit now at muffincrumbles.com. That's muffincrumbles.com, because sometimes the best things come from happy accidents.
On this week's episode of the Schein podcast, I'm joined by the incredible Bela Gandhi, founder of Smart Dating Academy. Bela's nationally acclaimed dating and relationship expert, known for helping people date smarter and find real, lasting love. Beyond coaching, Bela's a sought-after media correspondent, frequently featured on major networks for her expert insights on love relationships and dating success. Bela, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Evan. I'm so excited to be here.
No, and I'm excited that you're joining us on this week's episode of the Schein podcast. And I really want to start with your journey. I know that you left a successful career in business to follow your passion. And so was there an aha moment for you that made you take that leap?
Yeah, Evan, there really was. It's a great question. So I had thought about doing this. You know, the quick story is I have a degree in finance, a degree in German, and came out of school, worked in M&A. And then a year later, I joined my family's business, which was a manufacturing business. And I opened our business in Germany and Europe, and then we sold that company. So I stayed on and GM'd the big Fortune 500 division for 5 years. And I left because I was always that girl who was giving dating advice, matchmaking people, and nothing gave me greater joy than that, believe it or not. So I hemmed and hawed, and I had this big career doing all these other things. And I was like, how could I do this? Like, how would I get into dating? Like, would it be matchmaking? Would it be putting my system together? And that aha moment was I came across an article in a Harvard Business Review that talked about failure versus regrets. And I thought, okay, failure and regret, what's worse? And I thought, okay, if I tell my grandkids someday when I'm an old lady, hey, I started this dating business and it was a debacle, but here's where it led me. I'm like, okay, I could stomach that story. But if I said to them, hey, I had this dream, I knew how to do this, and I never did anything because I was afraid to fail. So don't do what I did. I'm like, well, that story sucks. I don't want that. So that was the aha moment that made me push the button, start to do my research. And 6 months later, I started Smart Dating Academy.
Love that. I love that story. And what's the biggest lesson that you learned from working in your family's business that still applies to dating today?
You know, my dad he's still around, was very much your customers, your clients always come first, no matter what. And they are right. And you will work hard and you will respond quickly. And those things, it's like ultimately, as part of the ownership, there was nobody, if a problem landed on my desk, nobody else was going to solve it. So I learned more working for my family's business than I probably did in 18 years of school altogether, how to treat people, how to handle difficult situations, right? And how to build a team, how to respond to people quickly, gracefully. So these skills, I think, were part of life university.
And you have this incredible business, the Smart Dating Academy. And I want to ask you about it. When you were single, would have you followed your own process or would have you rebelled against it?
Oh my God. I wish I was always the kid, Evan, that, now it's called personal growth. When I was growing up, it was called self-help. And I was always the one like, oh, I want to get better. I want to get better. I want to learn how to do things. There was nothing out there in this, right? And my parents are immigrants from India. They met on Sunday. They got engaged on Thursday. They were married 72 hours later. So I had no role models on how to do this. I had Disney as my role model. You're a princess. And someday a prince is going to come along with grandiose gestures and you're going to have butterflies in your stomach and all the birds are going to be chirping. And that happened once. I had my heart broken. It happened twice. Again, I'm like, wait, why did everybody that give me butterflies in my stomach end up breaking my heart? And so I'm an analytical finance person. I was like, none of this makes sense to me. So I put my own system together, to your point, that helped me to find my now husband of over 20 years. I helped all of my friends do the same. So it's a resounding yes to your excellent question. If I had this system to follow, hell yeah, I would have followed it. I have a 20-year-old and a 16-year-old, and I try to teach them like, hey, these are red flags. I wouldn't look past those because red flags are always there if you keep your eyes open.
And we're going to get into all those red flags, but you mentioned your kids. So I want to ask you, you have been called and referred to as the fairy godmother of love. How do your children feel about growing up with their mother as the fairy godmother of love?
They're very funny because even with all of the expertise that I've given them, they've grown up with dating manuals and they know what red flags are. They're kids, Evan. And I think what's been so eye-opening for me is just like I did, just like you did, we made our own mistakes, right? It's like our parents could tell us, don't do this, you're going to get burned. And you're like, no, I won't. And then you're like, oh, put my hand on the stove. Shit, I got burned, right? And that's how we learn. It's experientially. So I think that's been such an eye-opener for me. But now, as they get older, I've got a junior in college and a junior in high school, they've been through enough of these breakups where they're like, I think she's kind of right. And so now they've become the informal dating advisors for their groups of friends, which is hilarious.
You know what? They're going to be entrepreneurs too, and they're growing within the family business, the new family business.
I love it.
What's a piece of bad dating advice that you used to believe, but as you got experience doing what you're doing, you no longer believe was accurate?
So let's go back to something I just mentioned a couple seconds ago about butterflies, right? Everybody says, oh, if you've got butterflies in your stomach, it's great. It's exciting. I'm so excited for this person. It means I really like them. Actually, Evan, what it is, and there's a lot of research behind this, that after a first date, if you feel those strong butterflies in your stomach and your stomach is flipping over, not the little butterflies you might feel before you get on a podcast or you get on a stage to speak, but like where you're really like, oh, like you feel like you're on a roller coaster, it's your body telling you, hey, danger up ahead. It's your body saying something's not right here, but we mistake that fear for excitement. And we're acculturated and told that butterflies are good. And so when I tell people this, they're like, oh my God, are you kidding me? I'm like, no, stop chasing the butterflies. It's anxiety.
So on the topic of butterflies, are soulmates real, or do we create them through effort and compatibility?
I think B, not A. I think that there are people that you will vibe with more easily. You will be more compatible with just because of nature, nurture, and your backgrounds, right? Maybe it's religion, maybe it's ethnic diaspora. I think there's certain things that can make things easier when you learn how to pick correctly and you pick not for red flags. So I think that having a system to adhere to can ensure that you don't end up in those divorce rates. But I think, look, I mentioned my parents and the entire Indian matchmaking system. It's kind of, and I'm not advocating for this, but it's commitment first, then you fall in love with each other. And I think that there's something really lovely about blending the two. When you enter this with the right mindset, with the right person, then it doesn't feel like you have to make your soulmate and push a round peg through a square hole. When you pick correctly, date this person slowly, really see if there's compatibility, no butterflies, no red flags, green flags, then you know you've got something that can potentially go the distance.
So I love hearing that story, and also the story of your parents and how they got together and how they met and also married. When you look at different generations, how do the same principles apply no matter the generation, or is it a struggle for younger generations to appreciate that commitment, that love that made so many relationships and so many marriages truly special?
I think to some extent it's adult development and it's generational to some extent, right? I've been very humbled raising two kids, right? And you think, oh, my kids are never going to do this and I'm going to do, and you realize you've just given birth to two separate beings that are not you. They have come through you, but they're their own beings and they need to experience things themselves.
What would your younger self be most surprised about your career today?
I don't know that I thought I was going to be an entrepreneur. And the fact that I am one now, I think would have really surprised me. I remember taking an entrepreneurship class in undergraduate business school, and it's like, write an essay about, are you an entrepreneur, or do you think you're going to climb the corporate ranks? And I was like, oh, I'm going to climb the corporate ranks. Right. So I think
And
that,
look at how things turn out.
and I wanted to come back to the question you just asked me because I
Yeah.
lost my train of thought about is falling in love, I think, a generational thing? Does it get harder generation by generation? I think what happens is every generation, we put so much weight on chemistry and we put so much weight on that spark immediately, especially when we're younger and we're teenagers and we're in our 20s. And we don't realize that that spark is often just that. It's a spark, but it doesn't really measure compatibility. So I think most generations, to some extent, we all rely on chemistry and the spark. But the question is this person really good for me or not? And with today's generations, when I was dating, there was no online dating. I don't know about you, but I know with my kids, right, and millennials, they've grown up with dating apps, right?
Yep.
So they have so much more choice than prior generations did. You met someone at work, you met someone at a wedding, your mom set you up with somebody, you met them in your dorm or at a party, right? And that was it. So proximity and groups around us and community really determined our access to people. Now, I mean, you could go on a trip to Paris and get on a dating app and say, I'm going to land in Paris in 2 weeks. Who's single there and on a date, right? It's like was unthinkable 2 decades ago.
And so I think that goes to the point of accessibility. Now, I've had clients in the divorce space who have been married for 15, 20 years, and this whole online divorce dating process is such a foreign concept. How do you address when people get frustrated because there are so many people and it's so easy for someone not to give someone a second date or a second chance because you can go online and if someone isn't exactly as perfect as you imagine that they would be, you can simply swipe left, swipe right. So I feel like although there's tremendous benefits from online dating, one of the frustrations that I hear from my clients is the ability to get second dates and third dates because it's so easy to simply find someone else and move on very quickly.
Yeah, I think, it's the paradox of choice, right? The more choices of jam we have in a grocery store, the less likely we are to pick any of them. But if you give us three, it's like there's strawberry, raspberry, or grape. You're like, well, pick the raspberry, right? And so I think online dating is very much like that. If you don't enter it with that knowledge and that mindset, like it can feel like human eBay, right? So you're like, what do I do with all these people? And if this wasn't my future Disney husband on date one, and there weren't birds chirping and the angels heralding from all, because we think this is what love is, then we're very ready to just throw people back to the pond. And so if you enter it with the mindset, like good love is slow, love is going to come in an unexpected package. And these are just the apps force us to make decisions on quantitative metrics. How tall is somebody? What religion are they? What do they look like? What's their educational level? But we're all so much more than that. It's the qualitative that makes the relationship work, right? And the apps, and if you have this mindset, like, okay, I know this is a database of all these people around, it's up to me to say, okay, can I be more expansive with my height, with my radius, with these things? Because I know that love is going to come to me in an unexpected package, and stop being so judgy on 5 photos and 200 characters.
I love that. Love that phrase. Love is going to come to me in unexpected packages. And let's talk about divorce and dating. I get asked all the time, Evan, can I date? Should I date? And the challenge is these divorce cases, they can go on for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years.
Years.
And you're right, years. And for many people, there's no end in sight. And I'm a big believer that people should date when appropriate, obviously introducing a significant other, a separate issue. But I want people to be happy. I want people to move on. I want people to start that process of healing and transitioning and figuring everything out. What is your advice? What is your process for someone who is in the middle of a divorce or has just finished a divorce who wants to get back out there and start dating, searching for love again?
Look, I know my advice might differ a little bit than a divorce attorney's on this one, but I think where I agree with all my divorce attorney friends, it's like, look, have it be above board. Like if you're both as a divorcing couple going to be dating, that's fine. But if you're dating and you're not supposed to be, then you might prolong your divorce inadvertently. So I'm a fan of having it above board and dating, right? Because I think people need hope and you need something to look forward to. Nobody I know has liked getting divorced, right? Divorce is ubiquitously something people put on them as like it was one of my worst experiences, one of my worst failures. And to me, when you're walking through that tunnel of fire, to know that there is hope that you can do this again, that you can potentially find what I like to call the lid to your pot. If I learn a new system and I know how to do this so that I don't lather, rinse, repeat, and end up in a second or a third divorce again, be hopeful and get yourself out there, but don't do it to revenge date. Don't do it because your ex-spouse is out dating and you're like, well, screw that. If he's dating, I'm going to date. That's not a good reason to date. You need to date when you feel whole. You need to date when you feel like you have come to as much closure as you can. You're not angry anymore. Your date's not going to turn into a therapy session.
Oh, yeah, and again, you're the dating expert, but I'm guessing that no one who goes on a date wants to hear about the divorce and everything going on. I often say to my clients, look, when your spouse dates, you know what? They become occupied, focused on something else. They also want to get the divorce process over. But I agree, Bella, 100% about doing it the right way, because the last thing you want is where you're close to settling your divorce and all of a sudden you find out that your spouse is dating. That wrench, that twist, that, you know, problem that could create in your divorce and set everything back months just by dating. If someone finds out, especially someone finds out the wrong way, and I think in this day and age with social media and being tagged in posts and all that stuff, I think to your point, it's really important how people date and really doing it the right way.
Yeah, 100%. And just
Bella,
know
yeah.
that people are going to monitor your activity on social media as well. So if you're telling your ex, oh, I don't have any money, I'm not dating, blah, and then you're like, here's me in Saint-Tropez with my significant other, not going to bode well for you.
No, and as someone who takes depositions, I can tell you were giving that divorce attorney just great fodder for a deposition. So if you say you have no money and not enough money to pay support and child support and alimony, you probably shouldn't be flying, somebody all across the country. But
Putting it on Facebook.
exactly. Give us a dating myth that if you could erase from the world forever, what would it be?
That somebody's going to rescue you.
Tell us more.
So Disney kind of tells us that, right? Especially as women, there's that little Disney princess inside every one of us. We've been fed it from the time we were little girls until now. And this is generationally, to your earlier point, right? It's somebody's going to come and rescue me and complete me. And all of this will be magical and all of this will go away. Nobody is going to rescue you. You need to become whole on your own. Right? And that's when you're going to be a good dater, right? That's why I use the analogy, Evan. Find the lid to your pot. Think about being in a kitchen. A pot is complete. A pot can do the job just fine. It can make pasta. It can make a grilled cheese. But when you have a lid, it just makes it a little nicer.
So using that analogy, which I love, what is the weirdest or most unexpected lid and pot combination that you have seen work?
I've had people come in that have never dated outside of their race, have never dated outside of their religion. I've had, Caucasian women fall madly in love with an African-American man, never having conceived of that. I had a woman in Washington, D.C., have a guy come to her on a dating app and say, I spend my time between Washington, D.C. and Nigeria. And she's like, am I getting catfished? They're now married. And they got married in Nigeria and D.C. They had two separate weddings.
Who would have thought?
Who would have thunk it? So, I had a client who happens to be Indian, born in Chicago, and said, I really want someone Indian. My parents would really like me to marry someone Indian. And for a year, she eschewed anybody that wasn't Indian. And one day a guy came into her inbox who was like, oh, I love that that it seems like you have an Indian heritage. I just got back from Bangalore. I do a lot of work there and I go back and forth. And I was like, email him back. And they are now married for over a decade. She's a physician. He's a banker. They have a kid together. It works. I'm like, your parents aren't going to marry him. You are.
Yep. Brilliant. But speaking of people who aren't that lucky, and you give love advice all day long. Now, as part of your job, you probably also give tough love to your clients. So on that point, what is the wildest excuse that you've heard from a client on why they're still single? And what do you do to help people overcome certain things that they might not see?
Evan, I think it comes down to this. Sometimes when people will call me and say, I really like what you do, but Bella, honestly, I don't need coaching. What I just need is access to better people. Mic drop. Okay, that tells me everything I need to know. I don't know if there's a day in my life, including a day on my deathbed, that I wouldn't say, God, I would love some coaching. Can I get better somewhere? So I think when people come in with that mindset, like there's nobody good out there. The only people on apps are degenerate, losers or, people that have just been sprung out of jail or whatever that is. It's that mindset of there's nobody good out there that is so incapacitating. It's like what you focus on becomes true. If I tell you, let me draw this metaphor out. If I said to you, Evan, you and I are at a party together, and I say, hey, do me a favor. I'm doing some research. Walk around and tell me all the people in this room that are wearing red. And you would dutifully walk around the room with a little notepad and you'd hashtag every time you see someone wearing red and you're like, Bella, 11 people were wearing red. I'm like, great. How many people were wearing purple? You're like, you told me to look for red. I don't know how many people were wearing purple. This is how the human brain works. If you think there's nobody good on a dating app, your ego bias will only look for the bad people. Your ego bias, it's like putting on gray, dark lenses. You're unable to see people that are good for you. This is what my team at Smart Dating Academy does. We understand these are the biases that people walk in with and what it does to our brain. So we are in our clients' dating apps with them. Like, what about this woman? How did you miss this guy? Oh, I don't know. I'm like, well, I know how you missed him. Were you not in a good frame of mind when you looked at it? This is how we've helped people to be so successful.
I love that. I love that. What's the psychological reason so many people fall for bad partners? And what role does online dating play in that?
I think people fall for bad partners if they have family of origin trauma. That's one of the number one things. We can repeat what we see at home, which is oftentimes not good. And we can't choose our families of origin. So unless we have the self-awareness and we do the work around that and have some interventions to prevent that, that's one reason people pick bad people. Again, people also pick bad people because of the whole Hollywood Disney myth, right? There's love at first sight. Chemistry should rule everything. You should have butterflies in your stomach. There's a 3-date rule. So much of how we're acculturated leads to making bad decisions, right? And evolution plays a role in this, how the male brain is wired and how the female brain is wired and what we've preferenced over the last 200,000 years. Our cave people still run our brains, even though our world is so different now, right? I have to fight women all the time, and I use fight in quotes,
Sure.
but it's like, well, I'm 5'3", but I'd really like someone that's 6 feet tall. I'm like, do you know that only 12% of the adult male population is over 6 feet tall? You're 5'3". Like, even if you wear and it's fighting against these things, right? Evolutionary. Why? You want the tall, broad protector who can protect you from, marauding villagers, right? We don't need that anymore.
Why do breakups physically hurt? And is there some actual science behind the pain that people feel?
Yeah, emotional pain lights up the same receptors in our brain as physical pain. So we don't know the difference of being ghosted or broken up with and punched in the face to some extent physically. So the pain is real and the pain is prolonged. I kind of say, look, if you punch someone in the face, tomorrow it's going to feel better. You punch someone in the heart, not necessarily.
You mentioned ghosting. So I have to ask you, is ghosting ever justified, or is it simply just really bad dating etiquette?
I think usually it's really bad dating etiquette. I think sometimes it is justified. If you feel like your safety if you feel like you're in danger, it is completely fine to cut ties with somebody, block and delete them. No questions asked. Other than that, if you didn't have a good first date with somebody, you don't have to say, I don't think we are a match. If they ask you out again, then you can say, hey, you know what? You're a great person, and I'm sure you're going to make somebody great really happy. I don't feel like we're a great match, but I wish you all the best. That's a nice thing to do in the dating world in general. Don't leave someone hanging.
Is there something or multiple things that you would recommend that someone does before they start dating after coming out of a divorce, whether it's to date a few people, to have fun, to grieve, is there some process by which someone who's getting out of a multi-year divorce should go through before they look for that special person?
Yeah, I would say this is the ideal way to do this. You should absolutely have had therapy and counseling to process what happened and to also process your role in what happened. Every relationship takes two, right? I know it seems like there's a perpetrator, right? But at the end of the day, what did we tolerate? What was our role in letting this go on and on and on and helping to process that? That's step one. Step two, I would say engage a company like mine that will help you to understand what the dating landscape looks like today. Your friends will tell you, oh, just try the apps, throw some photos on there, go on some dates and see what happens. That's terrible advice unless you know what happened, what the red flags are, what the green flags are, what you're looking for this time. Human beings tend to do the same thing all over again because we're creatures of comfort. Even though we intellectually know what's right, like how many people will tell me, oh, I know what a narcissist is. You know, I was married to one. I'm like, if I put you back into the arena with no assistance, you're going to pick another one because that feels comfortable.
And I'm sure between the two of us, we have probably some of the best stories that anyone
For
could possibly
sure.
have. Give us a story, give us something a client told you about a first date that you just cringed and wished that you were just sitting side by side, whispering in your client's ear that said, please don't do that.
You mean that my client actually did?
Correct.
You know, I think there are one time we had a client who, started giving a male sort of some advice on what his neck looked like and what he could do to like surgically fix some of the loose skin on his neck. I'm like, probably not going to be a
Probably
second
not.
date.
Yeah.
Probably not, right?
Not a
Let's focus on what's good and maybe not give feedback right away to someone who wasn't seeking feedback. I said, did he ask you what you thought of his neck? She's like, no, but I just thought that he would want to know that there's a great plastic surgeon that could take care of some of that loose skin. I'm like, probably not on the first date.
Let me guess, there was no second date.
There was no second date. So, right, it was like cringe, move forward. That's not what to do. Even though you're coming from a place of love, there's a time and a place to maybe offer feedback like that, but it's certainly not on date one.
Ella, do you find it's harder for people to date today, or is it just different?
I think it's better for people to date today, and I think that it's worse for people to date today, right? It's kind of the standard answer. I think it's so much better than it used to be, Evan, especially for singles that are over 50, right? How would you have met somebody if suddenly you're coming out of a gray divorce in 1980? You'd go to a video dating service, or, you'd hope to go to the bar down the street. Like we had words like old maid, old spinster. You don't hear that stuff anymore, right? I go into a fitting room in a store and the woman in the fitting room will ask me, oh, what do you do for work? And I'm like, oh, I have a company and we help people find love at any age. She's like, oh my God, my 82-year-old aunt just met someone on JDate. When could that have happened in the past?
It's true. Yep.
Never, right? So I love the way the dating world looks today because of the access. But now every advantage comes with its underbelly. And so it can feel overwhelming. Most people aren't right for us. And when we're looking at the apps, it feels like, oh my gosh, how do I pick these people? So dating can seem more daunting. If you look at what, my God, thank God this is here. What would I do? What would I have done in 1983 when there was no internet and no apps, right? Okay, thank goodness. Now I just have to put my mindset to know most people aren't right for me. I want to look at people more qualitatively. I want to give people a chance, right? What's the harm? Message back and forth. People that aren't savory or good for you, they're not going to message you correctly back and forth. Have a conversation, right? Once you start messaging back and forth, and if it seems good and normal and easy, take it to a video date. Nothing good came out of COVID except for the addition of video to dating apps. Now, you don't have to have disappointing dates that were 50 pounds ago or 10 teeth ago. You can see this person on video.
No, you're absolutely right. And I want to ask you, because I had a couple, I represented somebody who was negotiating a prenup, and they actually broke up. And I can be absolutely convinced that there were other reasons why they broke up besides the one that I'm going to tell you, but they differed on politics. They had very strong political views and they were not aligned. And so I want to ask, have you seen politics play an increasing role either in what your clients were looking for in terms of compatibility when it comes to politics, just given the heightened temperature of the political landscape that we're living in?
100%. When I started 15 years ago, you had a Mary Madeline and a James Carville, right?
Sure.
They're great across the aisle. They have a marriage. They have a road show. They're funny, heavy Democrat, heavy Republican. Great. It can work. Today, look, if you wear your politics heavily and if it's part of your identity and it's non-negotiable, it's going to be very difficult to be with somebody across the aisle because politics have now become synonymous for many people with their values. And
Interesting.
so I've seen more polarization in the last 8 years than ever before. Very different than when I first started.
And Bella, I want to bring on producer Dave, a guy who might be your next client, who needs Dave. I don't want to steal your thunder, but I know he's always looking for love.
All right, Dave.
Dave,
Well,
take it away with your
always
segment. I
I've
said it.
I find love in this very podcast, Evan. I feel a lot of love, with the Schein on podcast, and maybe that's all I need, but maybe not. Well, anyways, I'm here for a reason. Let's get to it. It's the segment called "They Said It."
They said it.
They said it.
They said
They
it.
said it. They said it.
They said it.
On "They Said It," I provide 3 quotes from famous people of history, or people in the news, or who knows where they may come from. And the first quote comes to us from Cher, actress and singer and woman about town. Cher, of course. Cher said the following: The problem with some women is that they get all excited about nothing and then marry him. I'll say that again. Cher said the trouble with some women is that they get all excited about nothing and then marry him. Thoughts on the wisdom or not from Cher?
It's interesting. I would really love to know what she says about getting excited about nothing and then marry him. I think what she's saying here is people get excited about the wrong things and then they marry that person, which then probably leads them to Evan. Right? And so really understanding what you should be excited about, looking for that, dating for that, getting rid of things that aren't consistent with that. And that's how you find healthy, lasting love.
I have no comeback to that. I suppose that's true. Yeah, I think you're right. I think Cher's talking about how if you kind of get giddy that you actually like a few things about this person, it doesn't mean that's the love of your life after a couple of dates. And so,
Totally.
yeah, so set your expectations appropriately, I guess. Next quote, we go from Cher to historical figure, Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu, who said the following: being deeply loved by someone gives you strength, while loving someone deeply gives you courage. I had to read that 3 times, so feel free to take a minute with that one, Kalina. But Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu, being deeply loved by someone gives you strength, while loving someone deeply gives you courage. Your thoughts?
I think it's lovely. I think I'd agree with Lao Tzu. Being deeply loved by someone gives you strength. I don't think anybody would contest that, right? And while loving someone deeply, I would say loving the right person deeply gives you courage. If you love the wrong person, it might give you a lot of fear and anxiety. So loving someone deeply that's good for you will definitely make you more secure and give you courage.
Very good. Very good. I wonder what he would have thought of Cher's music. I'm not sure. Didn't have that back in his day. Let's move on to our final quote from They Said It. Yeah, we're going to go back into history again to French philosopher Michel de Montaigne. And Michel had the following to say: marriage is like a cage. One sees the birds outside desperate to get in, and those inside equally desperate to get out. Who knew there was such cynicism back in the days of the French Renaissance? But there you go. Marriage is like a cage. One sees the birds outside desperate to get in, and those inside equally desperate to get out. Your thoughts, Galena?
That is 100%. I think the grass is always greener. I would say that, it's like single people think, oh my gosh, it would be so amazing to be married in a healthy, loving relationship. And a lot of married people are like, wow, when you're not married to the right person, kind of seems like it might be better to be back out there on dating app. So
Yeah, I mean, I can say I've been there. I was married for 23 years, and the last few, mostly, I don't want to say miserable, but not happy. I'm very unhappy and was very envious of my single friends. Once I became single, within a year or two, I was jealous of my married friends because they had nice things, like nice houses and fireplaces and things. And I was like, you know what? That wasn't so bad. But it, for me, it became a case of you got to put a lot of care in everything that you do. But Bella, I don't know if you'd agree that although it's very important to do what you can to find your partner, you do have to be sort of happy with yourself and sort of and come to the conclusion that I'm going to do the best I can. But a person, it's not always Tom Cruise, Renee Zellweger, you complete me. You can be a complete person and still. Do you agree with that?
100%. I was talking a little bit earlier about, I use the analogy, finding the lid to your pot. The pot is complete as it is, right? When you find a lid, it just makes the whole thing a little nicer, but you have to be complete and happy in and of yourself in order to find someone who's complete and happy. Nobody can fill the void.
Totally agree. Yeah. So I hope everyone's listening, Evan. I think we've cured a lot of, as we record this, as it happens, Valentine's Day is coming up, and I think we've healed a few hearts today on the podcast.
Aw, I love that.
And thanks for being a good sport, Bella, and back to you to wrap things up, Evan.
Hey, that was awesome. Bella, I got to tell you, this was absolutely tremendous. Your Smart Dating Academy is absolutely wonderful. You have helped so many people date the right way, date well, find love. Tell everybody listening where they could learn more information about your dating academy, get in touch with you, your team, and be hopeful to find love again.
Great. Well, if you're wanting to explore more, I'm the host of the Smart Dating Academy podcast, and you can get our podcast wherever you find your podcasts, on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever. You can follow me on Instagram at Smart Dating Academy. We post multiple times a day, lots of free info, tips. And if you're really ready to consider investing in yourself and a system that works, and we're like personal trainers for your love life, go to smartdatingacademy.com and fill out a contact form, and we will certainly be in touch.
Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Episode 91 of the Schein On podcast. Dave, absolutely tremendous. I can't stop buzzing about that interview with Bela Gandhi of the Smart Dating Economy. How great was she?
She was terrific. Learned a lot. And I'm not dating currently, Evan, but if I ever am, she's the type I would look to for advice.
Dave, you got to give Bella a call. She's that good. That good. And I got to tell you, you know what else was great? The overrated, underrated segment. The docket was absolutely on fire. We end the summer strong on the Schein On podcast. I can't wait for the fall, the winter. We got some great stuff coming up in 2026. I am super pumped. To all the listeners, you can find the podcast and all episodes of the Schein On podcast wherever you listen to your podcast, and at Pod 617, the Boston Podcast Network. I'm Evan Schein, and I'll talk to you again real soon.